Good morning. It's Friday. So for those of you who still have jobs and go to them, congratulations. For the rest of you, it's just one more day in those endless days of those endless months of COVID in which we are having a hard time keeping track of time. Fortunately, at least from my experience, we're having a better job of keeping track of each other. Sometimes when things get rough, it gives us a reason to connect and reach out. And so I'm grateful to all of you who are taking time to take care of each other, who are taking time to elevate the movements going on around us right now, and who are taking time to care for yourself, because that's really important work. And you don't need to know what day of the week it is to take care of each other and take care of yourself. So happy Friday, happy good day, happy new day. We are so blessed today to have Eddie Hill here. He's co-director of the Black Food Sovereignty Coalition. He's going to talk with us today. Good morning, Eddie.
Good morning, Sarah. How are you?
I'm good. Yes. I just want to give those of you watching on the live stream a shout out that we want your engagement. I'd love to include you in the conversation. If you're watching this live, please feel free to join us this morning by commenting on this video wherever you're watching it. Your comments will come straight to our team, and I'd be happy to incorporate them into the conversation if I get them in time. If you're watching later or listening to the podcast, you can always reach out at ourportland@sarah2020.com. And I want to give a special shout out to those of you who are watching live. Space is helping us with captioning this morning. They're an innovative Portland-based nonprofit with a mission of making arts and cultural events accessible and inclusive to the deaf and hard of hearing. And I'm happy to support them and very happy for their help in making this live stream accessible. You can also view our captions in real time at sarah2020.com/captions. Thanks, Space, and thank you to our captioner, Lisa, this morning. So now this is a conversation that'll set you on your heels because you've got two people who like to think a lot and talk a lot. Edward Hill is an innovator. He's a driver of work. He works in so many aspects of sustainable placemaking, sustainable community building. He's a polymath, really, when it comes to food justice, food systems, BIPOC food economies for Black and Brown people in the Pacific Northwest. He's got a background in farming. He's got a background in planning. He's worked in cities around the world, helping them understand how they can do better. And so we're very happy to have him here with us this morning. Eddie, how are you?
I am good, Sarah. Thank you so much for having me this morning. Happy Friday. And thank everyone for here we are, almost done with July 31st.
Yes, wow. Yeah, see, months. What are months? Who knew?
Right.
So you're working on this project, the Black Food Sovereignty Coalition, and I want to talk about that, but I want to let folks know that you and I go back prior to this moment in terms of that period of time when Portland was still perceived, I think, largely as the sustainability leader. You and I were both working in this field of making sure that, people around the world had a good sense of what best practices were coming out of Portland and where we needed to be in that. And I found a picture of you from Williams Avenue back in 2015 with Bordeaux. We had hosted the region of Bordeaux. And for those, who might not be more wine savvy among us, that's a very important wine region in France, and it's critical to their economy. So maintenance of that land and that agriculture was critical, but they knew that they needed to engage the community in that. So you came and talked with them, and I'm going to read you a quote because you probably don't remember it. You said, "Context is everything. Nothing you see here is accidental, but most often it's poor people and bureaucrats who are left to clean up the mess that the market leaves behind."
I said that?
You said that. You're so smart.
Wow, that was a very cogent and aware moment. Wow, that's good to know. And that's 2015.
That was 2015.
And I
think we'd met prior. Yeah,
and that's true. Yeah. That was. I remember some of the projects that were triggering at that time, and the conversations, and actually, Kat Guggenauer was still here with the Right to Root stuff. Was just kind of curving up. Yeah, that was important. And then Japan, right? Didn't we do a tour with Japan?
We've done so many. We've done
Yeah,
Japan. You stopped in on the Project for Public Spaces when we were over at on Decum. That was a high level delegation. Those were all leaders. We've interfaced
yeah,
multiple times. But
yeah.
I think, looking back at where we were, even 5 years ago, if not 10, where do you see Portland still leading, if anywhere?
I think I think Portland is leading in, and I'm not, I'll try to find a way to make this serious. I
Hmm.
think Portland right now is leading in a demonstration of what losing or fumbling. I've considered the last couple of years fumbling, and
Hmm.
for Portland, and the work I did with eco districts and Rob Bennett and that team, and watching that program fumble, and and the fumbling has occurred. It's sort of the best, not best practices, but best examples of what not to do with all of your assets and
Hmm.
all of your brain trust and all of your community capacity to help turn and shift, uh, leading with innovation, and the forcing out of Cat Guggenauer and the right to root being taken up as a beacon of a planning document that if implemented a few years ago could have helped to curve off some of the losses, I think, the last 36
Hmm.
months in the Black and brown communities in Portland, and the inability for municipal staff, folks who were driving, because when I first came to Portland in 2013 and had been working with people with the food policy, the Multnomah Food Policy Council, disbanded in 2012, 2013, 2014. A lot of the downtown projects kind of stalled out, and the equity road mapping work began to sort of stall and stopped at the, hey, if we hire more people of color, if we engage more contractors, then everything's okay. And that was the least, that was those are the last things that really make an impact in terms of equity work. So I think a potential positive flourishing of ideas and innovation at the intersections of equity and urban planning and spatial equity and restorative justice was missed from 2017 to now, where now it's, I mean, in some ways forcibly and wonderfully, we have nature and biology forcing us to come back to these topics, like the Food Policy Council and a regional
Hmm.
food system, a localized food system, or ensuring that different types of housing, not just affordable housing and market rate, the 60% median workforce housing. For some reason that word went away in 2012, 2011. So that, I think there's this we rested on our laurels. We rested on
Hmm.
this, on the bike lanes. We rested on the transit, and we've got buses, and we've got the equity roadmap. And then people forgot to start walking walking
Hmm.
down the roadmap. And then it became disaggregated. A lot of the Black led programs were already fragmented, continue to be fragmented. You had, Verde on the north side, sort of like neighborhoodism. Cully was doing Cully's work, Northeast was doing something, and North is doing St. John's, sort of fractured
Hmm.
versus coming together. And we went more libertarian than we did liberal and I was a little concerned. I've been concerned, having had contacts, or I have deep contacts in city government and, both nonprofit NGO work here, and coming into this crisis we have now, from the earthquake planning to, city planning for disaster on down to, basic communication between community-based organizations seems to have not been our forte. So,
Yeah.
so here we are now. Now we have to address those things, and I think there's a forcing function that's occurring where now we can come back to these things because people are hungry, national food system's broken, and if we happen to have something else happen, oh, like one of the other things we were waiting for to occur naturally in this region, I think we're realizing now that a lot of our systems and a lot of the ways that we thought that we could lean on systems and community resources are not actually in place. So I see a wonderful opportunity to pivot, but again, it needs a will, just like businesses here. And if you don't want to pivot, if you're a restaurant and you don't want to pivot to takeout because you're too foo-foo or you can't see it, which happens, and then you're not going to make it versus restaurants that are like, hey, serve food to the homeless in the morning and train a couple of people and then clean the place out. And then in the evening, we can do takeout specialty dinners for 150 people. And I'll only make that many and keep half my staff on. There's a way to innovate all situations that I think if we truly are a city of sustainability and resilience, then right now we're not demonstrating that in a way that benefits those most at risk and most in the path of those things damaging them even further. Focusing on, again, one of the positive things about Multnomah County, about our region, is we have a lot of data about equity and who's not being taken care of. And it's very easy, at least it was for me and a few other people, to look at that data and say that BIPOC communities now are the communities that are going to be most impacted. Now, we also have the houseless community and, a Black trans community who are houseless. We have people who are stacked on that, in terms of additionals. But in terms of county data and city data, the economic responses or the economic condition, the housing condition, the nutrition and health condition of Black and Indigenous populations, primarily Native Americans of tribes or urban Indians who have moved from other locations to come to Portland, and African Americans and Africans now, because African Americans in second and third generation phase are African Americans. They are no longer immigrants and refugees. Their children are being impacted by the same types of psychological, physical, nutritional, and educational and systemic problems that African American children are being impacted. So we have a new population. We're doubling the population or increasing the population of African Americans because we have new second, third generation. Remove that term. They are now African Americans or Africans in America, or we're now them and they are now that demographic has grown. So the BIPOC community focus for now, similar to women's rights or civil rights for, the African American or Black, community civil rights movement. All of those things spread for everyone. Bike lanes did not equally, just like Apano, they dealt with those issues, and now we're shifting to climate change. But I think being innovative means we have to take risk. And for some reason, we're not taking the types of risks that will benefit and impact most positively those that have continued to be left out and negatively impacted.
So let's talk about that a little bit further, though, because you always drop so much wisdom in answering a single question.
Oh my goodness, yes.
There's never any small talk with us. We always go right to it. But here's the thing. I mean, innovation is key in that community resilience at the core and the fast pivot. I like to call it the art of the fast pivot in some ways, but that's only possible when you're strong, right? It's only possible when you're resilient. It's only possible when you're equipped. And what we're seeing is that some of this is about innovation, but what you're doing with food right now and food sovereignty and land sovereignty is as old as it gets. Right? It's so essential. And you and I are both land use people at the core, because we look at these human systems and we see them overlaid on this land. And we talk about place and connection to place as being such a key driver in how we engage communities. So tell me about, what are you thinking in terms of the Black Food Sovereignty Coalition? Why that? Why now? And how can we intensify our investments in what we know works to address some of the problems that you illustrated and highlighted in your first answer?
Yeah. So with the Black Food Sovereignty Coalition, it was not a, 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 it was not a it was a 15-year strategic plan and a regional. And I've been onboarding me working with folks in Seattle, Tacoma, African American growers, Black growers, African refugees and immigrants. People. This is 5-6 years ago, and now folks have kids and farms, things like that. I've continued to look at, and I think part of that innovative thinking is going and thinking in places. Just like at University of Washington in 2007, when they were talking about food systems, and they were like, food systems, urban planning, the APA wasn't even interested in it. And they didn't take that on until, 2010, 2012 as an official thing. So there's this aheadness that for some reason I've been given, the ability to do with other folks who have that skill like yourself, to look ahead of the current situation, look ahead of the problem, and say, if that problem is solved, what's the next problem? So if we have a transit line or a yellow line going all the way up to the north end, then what's the next problem in terms of development in between the stations, right? So I took the similar, and some of those tours we took, we did the downtown South Waterfront back before, this was 2008, 2007. And, before and the city of Seattle coming down here, and then people from Portland going up. So the shared information has showed me in terms of food systems work for the last decade is that there aren't very strong, in terms of that urban growth boundary. There's very little activity, and especially here in Oregon, and there's very little will in King County. If you look at it, Multnomah and King County, Seattle versus Portland, and Portland, in terms of addressing these food system issues. And I took that information and condensed it into what do I know in the event, or what do we know in the event of things not working? What's going to be most important in terms of getting food to people and nutrition, because you can't without people being fed. I mean, it's a hunger strike, right? So it's either a revolution or it's a hunger strike. So people needing to be fed is a key thing. The civil rights movement was what the most famous people of the civil rights movement were the farmers that fed, and the people, and the chefs and the cooks and the people who fed the civil rights movement that nobody knows names about. There's never like, hey, here's the farmer who delivered the food to Selma before they did the March on the Bridge with John Lewis. So this, for me, I like that. I like that kind of George Plimpton behind the scenes investigative journalist turned practitioner, right? So how about we try to get Black people and African immigrants together? How about we create in the Northwest specifically, because we're not in the South, create a block of people that want to do that work and economically can benefit from it, because access to being a housing developer and access to being a farm creator are radically different income streams and cash capital on the deck. There's already a strong white-led gardening training programs around the region for immigrants and refugees and low-income people. So instead of trying to recreate that wheel, level up and build a system from where Black people stop being gardeners and want to be farmers, and before they get to market. So our strategy has been getting folks to market, not just as farmers, but as food producers, food makers, import, export, anything that has to do with soil remediation, soil rebuilding. I've always thought that Indigenous people, Native Americans, and Black folks are the folks who can be enlisted in the American sense of the word, but also deployed with funding, radical amounts of funding, to be that WPA model that goes out and begins the stabilization of these urban and have the green ring of food around it. Our county currently does not, and Metro does not have a tri-county agriculture plan. That is ludicrous in the face of this. I'm talking to staff members there and people at the highest level of management, not leadership, but the decision makers haven't gotten this yet. But there's no agriculture land management program formally here. There's a bunch of good old boys that have been able to lease, county land or Metro land to grow whatever crops they wish, but there's no coordinated structure. There's no food office in the city to coordinate this work. There's no food policy council because it was disbanded. So
There's not even an emergency plan right now. I mean,
Mhm.
I've been cooking at Blanchet House and trying to volunteer at the shelters, and they have a guy who doesn't even have enough cold storage. So
Right.
we're not even coordinating supply chains and
And
things like that regionally. Yeah,
there are restaurants, there are companies that have shut down that have these facilities that they're waiting
exactly.
for COVID. I talked to them a month ago and they were like, "Hey, COVID will be over in 3 weeks. It'll be over in a month, and we'll be okay and be back to normal." And now, I have neighbors. It's that everybody's that's done. This is the next. This is 2020. This is what 2020 is. And
Mhm.
if the vaccine starts to work, if it doesn't turn us into zombies, if all of these things don't occur, then we still have a curve and a change in our lives and our system that regionalizes and localizes food. So infrastructure, something you just mentioned, that food infrastructure and knowing how much free available, not free, but paid for and in the market resources are available is something, like you said, we don't have a resource map yet. And we are out right now identifying companies and calling and getting calls and wanted to be that magnet because we knew something was going to occur. So when it
Mhm.
turns on, people start, well, who's the black farming people that are doing this, or who the folks that are taking food boxes. So now that we've gotten out of the initial USDA dump of food and shifting of the commodity crops into the community, now we're starting to see meat, cows and chicken and fish come in that's being redirected from all of the restaurants and all of the food locations that are being shut down. There's this plethora, 50,000 pounds of sable fish is being shipped here. And I just met the guy. He wants to get it out to community. I'm like, I can't store 50,000 pounds of sable fish right this minute.
I don't even know if Portlanders eat that much in a year.
Right. Thank you. Same thing, people are, like 1,000,000 pounds of potatoes came in. Right. And I'm like, I can't do anything with 1,000,000. I can't store 1,000,000 pounds of potatoes right now. So we don't have the county or the city food infrastructure to dump the food that we need for a year. We don't have enough. We don't have a co-packing facility in the city. We don't have a food processing center that people can access affordably. So again, we've come to the point where it's not housing, it's not transit, we took care of those. It's not biking, it's not electric vehicles, it's meals, it's access to food, it's healthcare, it's identifying where people are in terms of it's on the street with the homeless camps that are and the blocks of houses now that are tent homes and the new tents. And this is a permanent condition that I feel very, very, very strongly that organizations like ours, as we're building it to work both for the people, for the economy, and for the planet, and for spirit. Now you got quadruple bottom line. Finally, they added spirit and culture. Thank you for adding the last thing. That's the first thing in our community, right? So we start with spirit and culture, and the last thing that dominant culture puts into their economic planning is spirit and culture. So,
Well, it's hard to commodify that, Eddie. So we wouldn't want to give you credit for it.
yeah, no, don't give me credit at all. Don't give me credit.
You see what I'm saying? Like, I don't think if we can't measure it in terms of economic value off the
No.
top of our heads, our society doesn't really have much care for it. We don't invest in it. It's the same with mental health and a lot of other things.
No, not at all. Not at all.
So, hey, before we sign off, I want to hear, we're looking at potentially a 40% increase in homelessness due to COVID-related unemployment. We're looking at hunger. I'm looking at the poverty crisis as Portland's next mayor, thinking, what am I going to do? So talk to me about two things before we sign off. What does the city need to do for this movement? And that can be WPA level, because we do have access to money. And what should we be doing? And then two, what can people who are watching today or listening on the podcast do to help you and your project specifically?
Okay. The city. Having watched and like you mentioned at the beginning, we've seen some folks from all over the world come to town and we've got to talk. We've gotten the opportunity to talk to those folks from Japan, to South Africa. And gone to those places and watch their systems. What I think the city, like the punch list on the city for this challenge specifically is to get people fed, right? A local food initiative that ties with Metro and does a tri-county regional, not a food console, like a food, it's no discussion anymore. We know what's broken. We know it's the food assessment. How many refrigeration, how much refrigeration do we have? How many kitchens do we have? Whose kitchens are dormant and dark at night? And how do we get those places active, not 24/7, but double the activity of food prep, food storage, and start to have a tactical office that helps coordinate and map available agriculture lands, available food production areas, available community organizations that are ready to. This is a green workforce. Work Systems is ready to put dollars on this in terms of green workforce. We have a green loop that doesn't have any agriculture in it. We have a green boundary. We have an urban growth boundary that doesn't have an ag and food systems management, where we had just like concrete, right, or gravel or salt. Any other, I think food is a food systems are a critical infrastructure, just like sewers, electricity, water, and high-speed internet. So that's that important. And there's a way to not only monetize it for community, but there's a community food system ownership and a benefit that can come and be distributed, just like we have overages with like electricity. If we had a solar grid, we could sell energy back to the PGE or whoever else, so having this district food system, like a district energy profile, I think is critical. So an office of food and farms in the city, in the mayor's office, and then coordinating with other offices and municipal offices that will be forced by that innovative, fantastic approach to, just like climate change, create those offices and gather with you to make this thing happen. Is
that a more you think that's more of a planning process, or do you throw that right in emergency management and resilience?
No, I think that's I think that's a both and. I think a lot of our work now with planners is both and. It is both planning and action. It is tactical urbanism at its most perfect. When I think of tactical urbanism, it's like this. It's like, we got a problem. We're in the red parking lot. We set up a temporary food hub. We got a market going on Mondays with AFMA, and it come through market every other Monday, running to the end of the year, using that indoor-outdoor space at the red that was sitting dormant because no longer can they expensive parties. So those kind of opportunities to leverage and step up and meet with Randy Miller and Olympic Provisions and EcoTrust and find a way to not diversify their work, but help them find their way about how to stabilize our work and make our work resistant to the shocks and stressors and start to take root. So I think in the food economy is one of the best ways that Black and Indigenous people can take firm root and have longevity in this state in terms of an industry: agriculture, food systems, regenerative agriculture, soil building, animal husbandry, food production, food making. Black Food Sovereignty Coalition, the best way to help us, blackfoodnorthwest.org. We're on Instagram at Black Food Northwest, and we are identifying those farmers. If there are Black and Indigenous farmers that want help, reach out to us. Folks who are ready to scale up on food products, we're working with the RED and with AFMA and Oregon State University's Community Food Systems Program. Shantae Johnson with Mudbone Grown, she's on the State Agriculture Advisory Commission. I'm on the OCSFN, Oregon like Farm to School, and then Oregon Small Farms and Community Food Systems. So again, we're doing political work, but a lot of our work is immediately going into those rooms and saying, we have punch lists of immediacy that need to happen. Compost needs to be shipped over to this farm. These farmers need a refrigerator. These folks need a tractor. Let's move this over here, So, and I'm sorry, one more thing is, we have a lot of businesses and also developments that are, as this economy collapses more, and we're going to have these empty lands, there has to be a more robust, and when I was at PBOT in 2013, they were working on this and haven't finished it yet, alternative uses for rights of way. There's formal food-based environmental restoration plan for putting trees, cleaning, making it green everywhere, not just in certain communities or on bike lanes, but there's a resilience and and shocks and stressors plan that we need that is much more robust than a disaster management plan. Because we were doing disaster management, and I thought we had a report if there's an earthquake, and I'm not quite sure why the book wasn't opened up and you just change, copy and paste, or, you know, like replace earthquake with COVID, and then we could have fixed everything. But I don't think that book was really a real book. So
yeah, maybe it was just a book jacket, Eddie. I don't know. But we're writing the book. We're writing the book. We're writing the book. And that is the beautiful thing about Portlanders. We never stop. We stay optimistic and we stay in the fight. And I know that Portland is happy to have you. We are so grateful for your continued work. We're so grateful for your thoughtfulness too, because your leadership on these issues of having to force us time and again back to where we need to keep our eyes on the prize as opposed to looking off here is so critical. So thank you. Thanks for taking time out of your morning to be with us. If folks want to follow up, I'm going to give you that one more time. It's blackfoodnw.org, and you can follow up, get more information, donate if you can, do whatever you can to support these organizations, because they actually have all the knowledge and wisdom and capacity that we need, but we just need to make sure it's fully funded and unleashed to do that work on behalf of our community. So thank you, Eddie. We appreciate you.
Right on, man.
Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.